I believe in science, not God. If I had a coin for every time I heard someone say that to me, then I'd probably have 4, 5 coins. Anyway, is it really true that belief in God and science conflict? There are 2 questions we have to deal with in science when it comes to considering whether the existence of God is plausible. The first is creation. Essentially, how did the universe come to exist in the first place? We have 2 options here. Either the universe is infinite, it has always existed without a beginning, or it is finite, it came into existence at a certain point. If the universe is infinite, it does not require a creator because it was always there. This theory was prevalent in the ancient world, but since the 1960s, the scientific world has found strong evidence that the universe had a beginning, what we call the Big Bang. Now, if the universe is finite, if it had a beginning, it would require something beyond the universe to create it. The logic is simple. Everything in the universe is based on cause and effect, and therefore if the universe began, it is the effect, and therefore must have had a cause. Now, what would this cause look like? Well, it follows logic that since this cause is outside of the universe, and thus outside of space, it would have to be spaceless and immaterial. Since it's outside of the universe and thus outside of time, it would have to be timeless. And in order to cause the universe to exist, it would need to have unfathomable power. A timeless, spaceless, immensely powerful force. Does this sound like something contradictory to the monotheistic concept of an infinite God? Today, it is actually the atheists who have a greater burden of proof, not the monotheists. The monotheistic position does not inherently contradict science if the universe is finite. So what do the atheists say now with regard to the creation of the universe? Well, the best idea that they have come up with is to posit that it is possible for something to come from nothing, as argued in Lawrence Krauss's book, A Universe from Nothing. He argues that just because the universe had a beginning, it doesn't necessarily have to require a cause. David Albert, professor of philosophy and director of the MA program in the Philosophical Foundations of Physics at Columbia University, reviewed Krauss's book and destroyed the basis of the argument. What Krauss described as nothing, quantum fluctuations, Albert explained, was something, and therefore the whole argument that the universe came from nothing did not stand. The second question with regard to science and God is about design. How is it that the universe is so finely tuned for life and so complex in its nature? We also, again, have 2 options here. Either it all happened by accident, or it was designed by an intelligent designer. The unbelievable intricacy, beauty, and constants that permit the universe and life to exist seems to suggest to us that you need a designer. To put the 19th century theologian William Paley's example in modern terms, imagine you were to stumble on an iPhone in the desert. You would recognize that its complex nature must have been designed by someone. To suggest that it came into its current form in a random process which was not guided by an intelligent designer would be absurd. So how much more so should we apply this to the universe? By the mid-1970s, scientists began to recognize something known as the anthropic principle, which is that the universe doesn't just happen to be suitable for human life, it seems to be set up that way. The universe exists within what scientists have called the Goldilocks zone. Different constants are just right for life to exist. If they were just slightly different, life would not be possible. Some examples. Number 1, the distance of planet Earth to the Sun. Not too far, not too close. If it was one or the other, we would be extinct. Number 2, the way the Earth spins on its axis, providing seasons. Number 3, the unique properties of such a simple molecule as water. For example, in warming weather, chunks of ice float rather than sink to the bottom of a lake, where they might melt extremely slowly. This doesn't happen with other liquid molecules. These properties therefore allow aquatic life in the lake to survive during the winter. Sir Fred Hoyle, who was an atheist, said that, quote, "a common-sense interpretation of the facts suggests that a super-intellect has monkeyed with the physics, as well as with chemistry and biology, and that there are no blind forces worth speaking about in nature. The numbers one calculates from the facts seem to me so overwhelming as to put this conclusion almost beyond question. The incredible design, structure, and fine-tuning of the universe as a whole therefore indicates that there is an intelligent source which designed it." So what do the atheists say to this? Now, it's important to recognise that today the debate is not between scientists and religion. It is between the scientists, those who are theists in some capacity and those who are not. Today, the atheists say that the design of the universe is remarkable, but maybe there are an infinite amount of universes that exist, and we just happen to be living in the one with all the right constants. This is known as the multiverse concept. So, what is their evidence of this? Nothing. By definition, the multiverse is not provable, as we cannot escape the dimensions of our own universe. Bernard Carr of Queen Mary University said, quote, "If you don't want God, you better have a multiverse." Isn't it ironic that the atheists are relying on nothing evidence-based here? So who exactly are the ones with the blind faith? George Ellis, a famous cosmologist, wrote an article which featured on the front page of Scientific America, where he said, quote, "The trouble is that no possible astronomical observations can ever see those other universes. The arguments are indirect at best. And even if the multiverse exists, it leaves the deep mysteries of nature unexplained." A specific question in the issue of fine-tuning is how living things, animals and human beings, came to be. Darwin's theory of evolution, though logically coherent, has two fundamental questions which remain unanswered. The first is the question of how that first original living cell came into being in the first place. Darwin believed that it emerged from the inorganic earth. But as Freeman Dyson pointed out, quote, "There is an enormous gap between the simplest living cell and the most complicated naturally occurring mixture of non-living chemicals. We have no idea when and how and where this gap was crossed. The first living cell would have had to contain DNA, something which, as Bill Gates put it, is, quote, like a computer program, only much more complex than anything we've been able to design." Francis Crick, the man who discovered DNA, said, quote, "An honest man, armed with all the knowledge available to us now, could only state that in some sense, the origin of life appears at the moment to be almost a miracle. So many are the conditions which would have had to have been satisfied to get it going." And Dr. George Whitesides, an organic chemist from Harvard University, with the highest Hirsch index rating of any living chemist, wrote on this topic, quote, "How? I have no idea. Based on all the chemistry, I know it seems astonishingly improbable. Today there is still no proven way how an organism with DNA, no matter how simple, could have emerged from an inanimate element if guided by nature alone." The second most notable issue with the theory of evolution is that it is extremely unlikely for it to have occurred by chance. Sir Fred Hoyle wrote that, quote, "The chance that higher life forms might have emerged by chance is comparable to the chance that a tornado sweeping through a junkyard might assemble a Boeing 747 from the materials therein." John Barrow, research professor of mathematical sciences at the University of Cambridge, and Frank Tipler, a physicist, cosmologist and mathematician at Tulane University, calculated the probability of the evolution of the human genome to be, essentially, impossible. The questions around evolution, both how it begun and its likelihood of producing life, don't necessarily destroy the legitimacy of the theory, but there remain unanswered questions, and at this stage, you would need to believe that it did not happen by chance, but that it was a guided process. So to claim that evolutionary theory necessarily negates the need for an intelligent designer is simply wrong. These points, among others, led evolutionary professor at the University of Cambridge, Simon Conway Morris, to say that, quote, "Atheism is dead." Could it be that science is gradually coming to recognize the necessity of the world having a creator and a designer, of there being a God? You may argue that science doesn't necessarily indicate that there must be an intelligent designer and creator. You can say we just don't have all the answers at this stage. But to claim that science necessarily negates the existence of God is simply untenable. I'm Ollie Annisfeld, and you're watching JTV. To stay up to date with JTV content, click subscribe here if you're on YouTube and hit the alarm bell. And if you're on Facebook, hit the like button, and under following, click See First. If you enjoy watching JTV content and want to help us continue to grow, please consider making a donation to us by clicking here.